From the beginning of time, when man first walked through the primeval forests on the planet Earth, he has been curious to explain his own behavior.
Later, Skinner took up the saxophone.
Often he has attributed his actions to the sun, the movement of the tides.
At the core of Skinner's work,
be it applied to education, medicine, or psychology.
While schools exist as a microcosm of society, schools also exist in dialogue with society and as a multiplier of its generative and destructive traits. When societies adopt the language of the market that rewards competition over collaboration, conflict over solidarity, and short-term individual gain over long-term mutual sustainability, it should not surprise us when school policies and practices reflect the same. Think of how we describe academic achievement in schools through the language of scarcity. Achievement gaps, no child left behind, race to the top, good schools versus failing schools, student loan debt, GPAs, and class rank. The socioeconomic context of any of these metrics is inseparable from what they purport to measure and reward. And what they communicate is clear: that children who grow up in proximity to wealth reap the academic and socioeconomic benefits. The concern about education policy as a tool for adequately addressing achievement gaps is not a uniquely American phenomenon. In August 2022, a study from the Institute for Fiscal Studies in the UK found that, despite decades of policy attention, there has been virtually no change in the disadvantage gap in GCSE attainment over the past 20 years. While GCSE attainment has been increasing over time, 16-year-olds who are eligible for free school meals are still around 27 percentage points less likely to earn good GCSEs than less disadvantaged peers. The report also found the relationship between family background and attainment is not limited to the poorest, but educational performance improves as family income goes up. Just over 10% of young people in middle-earning families gained at least one A or A-star grade at GCSE, compared to a third of pupils from the wealthiest tenth of families. The United States, the UK, and their OECD peers, among the wealthiest countries on Earth, have enough resources to go around. Perhaps the solution to academic achievement isn't doubling down on test scores and interventions like homework that serve as a proxy for family income, but actually solving underlying systemic inequities, as Etta Karalovic and John Boole note in their book, The End of Homework. Citing the low test scores of American students has become a favorite cocktail party game. However, some scholars have offered a more nuanced explanation for the poor showing by U.S. students in international academic performance comparisons, suggesting that it may have more to do with high levels of childhood poverty and a lack of support for families in the United States than with low academic standards, shorter school days, and fewer hours spent on homework. The stakes of education have also risen in direct relation to socioeconomic precarity. Although incomes have risen in the United States, the income gap between low and high-income American families has grown to historic levels. Growing income and wealth gaps have contributed to socioeconomic sorting with lasting negative consequences. It has thrown sand in the gears of social mobility, as only 8% of American children raised in the bottom 20% of the income distribution will ever join the top 20% as adults. While concentrating wealth into increasingly smaller fractions of the 1% provides for the maintenance of institutions and policies that protect and justify this unjust and inequitable stratification. These efforts have manifested in part as a near constant demand for the dismantling of our public schools for private personal gain, as education has come to be viewed as a high-stakes, zero-sum game played for the advantage of a few rather than a public good for all. Unified in the language of the market, political, economic, and education reform projects of the last 40 years have in this way become a self-fulfilling prophecy, breaking public institutions and undermining the public faith to demonstrate how broken they are and how glad we should be to part with them.
If you're somebody who thinks that business should run the show, that the tax burden on the wealthiest should be as little as possible, that government should either get out of the way or tilt the scales in the direction of making the first two things happen, anything that enables a group of people to come together and make a collective demand is your enemy. And you think about what schools do, right? That's where, by their very nature, kids go to a school and the teacher is supposed to raise their sights. They're supposed to encourage them to believe that they can be more. And so if your goal is to shrink people's expectations, you can see exactly why they would be opposed to schools.
While it's the role of the public to debate and disagree on the means and ends of education, public schools, including public charters, are made better by mass democratic participation in shaping them to meet the needs of the communities, families, and students they serve. That process is not served by the abdication of state and local, and increasingly federal governments, in their failure to meet those needs and subsequently handing the reins, as well as the purse, over to market forces and industry tycoons to cash in. How do sincere people take an honest account of the real need for educational change while recognizing that the narrow, unpopular ideological program of the would-be unmakers is also antithetical to the project of democracy? All of this is to say that as a values-driven public policy endeavor, the ends and means of education should be understood as having always been political. And as we wrestle with our changing values and the role of schooling in society, we should not cede the public conversation.
I think it's really important to name that teaching is political, that the greatest lie that hegemony ever told was that our work is apolitical, that our salaries are decided in some communities by vote. That's political. That school districts are made and gerrymandered by city councils. These are political, that budgets are made, and so literally the food that I put in my mouth that I draw from a paycheck that I get from New York City, that's political. The belief that teaching is apolitical, we're lying to ourselves.